Due to the intervention of unknown cosmic waves, some plants and animals on Earth began to rapidly evolve, acquiring strange and frightening forms, which is why people called them ghostly creatures. The qualification exam for the title of Beast Master is scheduled to take place next month, and Leewin was especially interested in what changes had occurred in the structure of the exam questions this year. Meanwhile, the transfer of examination materials was watched with interest by Ms. Kelly, one of the strongest and most experienced C-rank trappers, who enjoyed great respect. Most ghostly creatures evolve with the help of special types of or that have special properties, but there are also those that can develop in other, more mysterious ways. I wonder if Ms. Kelly will share this important information with others, as some of these creatures have been observed to evolve by absorbing strong human emotions such as fear, anger, or despair. Some ghostly creatures have adapted so much over time that they have taken over jobs that were previously exclusively held by humans. And those who are unable to control or interact with these creatures are forced to do the hardest and lowest paid work, just to avoid starving to death. One such example is the profession of a phantom miner. Phantom miners are workers whose job is to enter a mysterious space called the secret realm of phantom creatures, where they mine special ore that has various attributes, and the ore itself is incredibly valuable. But despite this, the miners' earnings remain extremely low. But it is impossible to change this state of affairs, because ghostly creatures work harder than people, and in addition, they look much more attractive, and in the meantime, the main character went to the counter and asked for 2 meat buns. Someone standing nearby noticed that he had arrived quite early today. Uncle Wang, one of the workers, offered him to try the food he had recently purchased from a new restaurant, and the boy thanked him with sincere gratitude for his concern. However, others standing nearby began to mock and call the protagonist shameless, because he moves only a couple of pieces of ore with such effort, and in the end he still gets money for it. Sad, but such is his fate. Although he knew that they were talking badly about him, he still remained silent, but Uncle Wang, hearing this, became furious and began to be indignant. The protagonist calmly replied that he realized that his physical condition was far from ideal, but this time he would work as hard as he could and try to get at least a little more ore, asking his uncle not to pay attention to these chatterboxes. He advised all those who do nothing but chatter to get down to business and quickly move forward into the secret kingdom. One of the guys asked if anyone needed a little more time to prepare. If not, let them go ahead. After this, he began the process of opening the portal. A few moments later, the portal was fully open. The guy, without wasting a second, stepped into it first. He then turned and looked at the others, making it clear that they could follow him. Without further ado, everyone else followed suit and entered the portal. Leewin knew that this time he had to bring more ore than usual, otherwise he would not only let himself down, but also Uncle Wang. Someone in the group asked how exactly they would divide up the responsibilities this time. Old Man Wang came up with a great idea, to form pairs so that everyone would feel responsible for their comrade and no one would be left without help. Leewin heard that they were talking about him behind his back again, but this time the man standing next to him stopped him and told him not to pay attention. They would just dig ore elsewhere without getting involved with these gossips. On the way, Leewin apologized to the man, regretting that he was always causing trouble. The man reassured him, saying that he shouldn't blame himself, everything was fine. The main thing was that they worked together and supported each other. After about an hour, Leewin felt his body starting to get tired. But he knew he couldn't afford to rest. He had to hold on and not let Uncle Wang down. At that very moment, they both heard a loud and alarming cry coming from nearby. Leewin immediately began asking what was going on and who was screaming. They immediately rushed to help their partners. One of the men, overcome with fear, screamed that someone had been attacked by a monster and that the person had died. And the guy who had led them into the mine earlier stood to the side and calmly watched what was happening. He turned slowly and looked straight at them, as if he was waiting for something. Leewin and Uncle Wang were shocked and frightened when they saw his expression. They started shouting that his beast had gone crazy, a huge rat had attacked one of the workers, and that he should call for help immediately. But the guy, with a grin, told them to calm down and said that it was he who gave the order to his beast, the nightmare wolf, and now the wolf will taste their flesh. After these words, he directed the beast straight at them, leaving no chance to retreat. People started screaming in panic, calling for help and begging, because they realized that the trapper had completely lost his mind, and the wolf was really going to tear them all apart. The main character couldn't believe what was happening. Was everything really as he thought? He remembered how Miss Kelly had once told him that some animals grew stronger by feeding on people's negative emotions, such as anger, despair, and fear, and if they encountered such creatures in the forest, they had to be extremely careful. The main character shouted for everyone not to panic, not to run away, but on the contrary, to gather together, because the more they are afraid, the stronger the wolf becomes, and the trapper is deliberately escalating the situation so that his beast evolves. Leewin convinced everyone that if they united and acted together, they could win. The guy controlling the wolf didn't expect that such an inconspicuous person could have such a clear and determined mind. And indeed, Leewin was absolutely right. The wolf needed the energy of fear and chaos to evolve, and now the trapper gave them two options. Or they will follow this pathetic youth and try to fight his monster, risking death at the clutches of the nightmare wolf. Or they will start killing each other to saturate the wolf with enough dark energy for the final transformation. After this, everyone suddenly fell silent and looked at each other warily. Leewin understood that he couldn't allow himself to mislead the others. He needed to calm the workers down quickly, otherwise it could end in a massacre. At this moment, Leewin's attention was distracted by something strange. He noticed an unusual tattoo on the shoulder of one of the guys, which immediately seemed familiar to him. He realized that this was a sign of a criminal organization of ghost beasts, shadow hunters. Perhaps this guy was one of them. The guy said threateningly that he was giving them only 5 seconds to think. Leewin tried once again to reach out to the others, begging them to calm down and not believe him, but instead to trust him. It was at this moment that something completely inexplicable happened. Leewin was furious because he had clearly told them not to take any action. Leewin was next to this guy and was about to grab him. It was at that moment that the man looked into his eyes with fear, as if he had a premonition of something terrible. Leewin couldn't understand why Uncle Wang hadn't intervened yet. Uncle Wang began to apologize, saying that he didn't want to die, because he had helped him so many times before. Should he really die for him now? He has a family, a wife and children, and Leewin has nothing. He said that he had no intention of fighting the wolf, because a man could not defeat a beast, especially one that he considered part of his family. Leewin called him a real bastard with pain in his voice. Wang Zhen betrayed him. Leewin realized that he would have to attack this man too, otherwise he would not survive. Then another movement distracted his attention. One of the workers, without thinking, hit him in exactly the same way as the others. The boy fell to the ground, knocked off his feet by the unexpected attack. Leewin was furious that they all suddenly pounced on him like crazy. They stood staring at him, and he looked at them with despair and fury. The trapper said with delight that it was all simply magnificent. He let the nightmare wolf absorb all of their emotions, and didn't expect that the energy of fear and hatred would be much stronger than if he had simply killed them one by one. After some time, everything more or less calmed down, but many were no longer alive. Van began to ask if anyone had managed to get out. Others approached him and asked what they should do now, where to go. Leewin lay nearby, perhaps dead, perhaps simply unconscious. Wang looked straight at him, not looking away at that moment. After this, they calmly threw his body into the river, without showing the slightest regret. Wang then said that he would tell everyone that there had been an accident in the mine. No one should know the truth about what happened. It's better for everyone to believe their legend. Leewin couldn't tell at that moment whether he was dead or not, but he knew for sure that he didn't want to die like that, because then who would take care of his younger sister? He remembered her voice when she asked him to come early, promised to wait, told him not to forget about the lunch in the refrigerator. Leewin felt that he had no right to give up. He would take revenge on those bastards, both Wang Zhen and the beast hunter. His heart was filled with betrayal, hatred and uncontrollable anger. This desire for revenge was so strong that it seemed to give him the strength to move on. Let this mighty force bring destruction to the world that binds everyone with invisible chains. The time has come to destroy everything that mercilessly enslaves the souls and hearts of people. The main character was nowhere to be seen, as if he had disappeared from the face of the earth. A few seconds later, his hand emerged from the murky, cold water. Leewin coughed and choked, struggling to get out of the seething river. He weakly raised his head, looking around the cave he found himself in after the fall. He realized that those bastards had left, leaving him here to die alone. He crawled forward slowly, clinging to slippery stones and tearing the skin off his hands. Leewin coughed loudly, spitting out water mixed with blood and mucus. He couldn't understand why his wounds suddenly started to heal on their own. He saw a strawberry cat nearby, not believing his eyes and the sense of reality. A window popped up right in front of him, looking very much like a system notification from some game. It was an interface similar to a game system. The evolution of the ghost beast began. A mission appeared on the screen: make a contract with the beast and become a real trapper. He must push himself to the limit, do everything possible to take revenge on his enemies. Leewin looked around the entire mine, trying not to miss even the smallest details around. He couldn't remember how he had forgotten the whole year he had spent in this place. Since he is here again, let this year be his instrument. A few minutes later he came to his senses, slowly opening his tired and cloudy eyes. He looked at the strange cat standing in front of him with caution and surprise. The cat jumped up abruptly, and Leewin jumped back, frightened by the unexpected movement. With a grin, the cat asked him if he was going to fight, speaking in his own language. Leewin tried to explain that he meant no harm and was grateful for the rescue. Before he could finish speaking, he suddenly received a strong blow to the face from the cat. Leewin didn't react and took the full brunt of the sudden blow. Enraged, he shouted that in front of him stood an impudent, stinking cat without a conscience. Wen's every move carefully. Meanwhile, something strange and inexplicable began to happen at the exit of the mine. Leewin walked out of the portal, feeling the contrast between the darkness and the bright light. He heard voices saying that someone had appeared and that he needed to check everything urgently. The protagonist quickly noticed the chief foreman of the mine in the crowd, and immediately became wary, feeling how everything inside him was squeezed with a bad premonition. The guy couldn't understand whether he had only imagined it, because, according to eyewitnesses, no one had come outside, and it would have been simply impossible to get out of there. Van was hit really hard, too many of his comrades died. He ran out from underground in horror, screaming in despair, desperately trying to save the others, but he didn't make it to any of them. There were rumors that even the beast hunter, one of the most experienced and cautious, disappeared without a trace, as if he had dissolved into thin air. But most people were no longer planning to run anywhere or do anything. More than 5 hours had passed since the disaster, and everyone was sure that it was impossible to survive in such conditions, although, in the opinion of some, if this bastard had not struck first, many could have survived. The protagonist clenched his teeth so hard that his jaws almost creaked, realizing that he would definitely make Van answer for every crime, for every lost life, for every drop of blood spilled. He couldn't understand what exactly was happening right in front of him, and why such a large crowd of people had gathered right here, near his house. It was at this moment that a woman from the crowd looked at him intently, as if she recognized his face and could not believe her eyes. People began asking questions, one after another, vying with each other. Where had he been all this time? How had he survived? And did he know that his house was now on fire? The woman, without waiting for an answer, quickly called the police, adding that the firefighters were already on the way, and casually asked where Zai Yang was, since it seemed like she had gone with him. The main character immediately jumped up without saying a word and rushed towards the house, despite the fact that they tried to stop him, warning him that entering a burning building was mortally dangerous. But he didn't listen to anyone, because he understood that his little sister was still inside, and she was in mortal danger, which was getting greater with every second. He began to bang on the front door with all his might, shouting and asking if his sister was inside, begging her to answer. He kept calling her name, asking over and over again if she could hear his voice, begging her to answer with even a word. And at that critical moment, amid the crackling fire and billowing smoke, his sister finally answered him from within in a weak, frightened voice. The protagonist begged her to hold on with all her might, assuring her that he was already here, nearby, and would very soon open the door and pull her out. He feverishly pulled out the key and tried to open the door, but the lock was jammed and did not yield to either pressure or turning. When he grabbed the door handle, his palm was suddenly burned. It was white hot from the fire, and he could not hold back a cry of pain. He immediately realized that the door was not just closed, it was jammed, and it would no longer be possible to open it in the usual way, no matter how hard he tried. He tensed every muscle, grabbed the door with both hands and, growling, began to push it with such force as if he was trying to knock down a wall. The situation was becoming more and more critical, the flames were getting closer, the smoke was thickening, and he clearly understood that there was less and less time left. Then, unexpectedly for himself, he weakened and collapsed on the floor, completely exhausted, unable even to rise. Even lying on the floor, he continued to call out to his sister, repeating her name, not intending to give up despite the exhaustion and pain. Then he suddenly fell silent, staring at the door as if in a daze, as if he had seen something that changed everything. A strange expression flashed in his eyes, as if he finally understood what exactly he needed to do to save her. He looked at the door handle in his burnt palm and realized with amazement that he had torn it out entirely in the heat of desperation. He clearly understood how out of control the situation had gotten and that he now needed to urgently find another solution while there was still a chance. In a fit of rage, Leewin began to shout and curse, unleashing a stream of obscene language on the ill-fated door, as if blaming it for what was happening. The sister inside screamed in panic, begging him to leave and save himself before it was too late, while he could still survive. The main character began to call for help, scream, beg everyone who was nearby to save his little sister. After all, she was only 13 years old, and she hadn't even begun to live yet. At that moment, something strange and truly frightening began to happen to the strawberry cat, as if an unknown force was awakening within him. He absorbed the energy of rage, saturated with it to the limit, and it seemed that something irreversible was about to happen. Suddenly, the strawberry cat stretched sharply, as if he was getting ready for a fight, and there was a wariness in his movements, as if he sensed something dangerous approaching. At that very moment, he stood up, tensed his muscles, and everything around him seemed to freeze in anticipation. The air became denser, and the silence took on an ominous hue. After that, he confidently headed towards the door, without looking back, as if he knew exactly what he needed to do, trying not to waste a second. After a few tense seconds, he finally opened the damn door, yanking it sharply with his paw with unexpected force. Inside, pressed against the wall, sat a frightened sister, and her eyes showed the strongest surprise, mixed with relief and disbelief. The main character was also shocked to the depths of his soul when he saw her alive and unharmed, not believing his own eyes and feeling a wave of relief pass through his body. Strawberry Cat just smiled silently, watching what was happening with some pride and slight arrogance, as if he knew that everything would go exactly this way. Then the main character looked at his sister with concern, assessing her condition, noticing the abrasions and traces of soot on her face, and only after that did he decide to approach. Someone nearby was saying that yesterday one guy caught a fire fox, and another an ice dog, and these cases caused quite a stir among the trappers. Some dreamed of trying their luck and finding the air-type ghost beasts, as such creatures were rumored to have incredible speed and could elude even the most experienced hunters. The protagonist clearly realized that he had to find a powerful creature and become the strongest hunter, because only in this way could he protect his sister from future dangers and attacks. 12 hours ago, his sister had looked at him with disbelief and asked if it had really been like this, as if she couldn't believe he'd gone through something like that. She suggested that her brother contact the police, because it seemed like a logical step, but the protagonist replied that Wang Zhen was a cunning and dodgy guy, and as soon as he found out who was against him, he would immediately try to kill that person again, leaving no chance. He added that she shouldn't worry and not take it all on herself, because she was safe now, and he would do everything possible to keep it that way. At that moment, someone in the crowd chuckled and said that everyone looked at the guy as if he was a real fool, because he signed a contract with a strawberry cat, despite the fact that the newcomer only has 2 contracts, and he decided to choose a cat, which only caused ridicule. The protagonist did not understand what was wrong with these people and why their ghostly beasts were so weak, because they acted arrogantly, as if they were invincible. One of them had a level 8 ice dog, which was formidable in appearance, but it did not show any special strength in battle, which raised doubts. The girl had a cute level 6 rabbit, and although it looked harmless, its abilities clearly did not justify its high rank. Leewin couldn't figure out if it was possible that it was his own beast, because the strawberry cat didn't act like other beasts, and sometimes its actions were too unpredictable. He had a level 5 strawberry cat, and its stats were as follows: Heavenly Emperor, increased movement speed by 15%, Battle Sage, increased damage dealt by 30%, Invulnerability, decreased damage taken by 30%, and Heritage, an additional increase in attack speed by 15% and damage by 15%. He doubted whether these were really the stats of his beast, or if he was just imagining it, because the cat's behavior often went beyond the described abilities. At that moment, some guy ran out of the forest screaming, clearly in a panic, and said that there were second-level beasts living inside, and he saw them with his own eyes. He was asked again if he was sure, because the second levels only live in the beginner zones, and if he really caught one of them, he could become invincible among the junior trappers, gaining a huge advantage. At that moment, the blonde was asked what exactly happened, and he replied that the beast was incredibly fast. He saw only a smeared trail, perhaps it was a lightning cat, capable of disappearing in an instant. Everyone immediately rushed in the direction where the beast appeared, wasting no time, because each of them wanted a chance to catch the rare creature. Leewin knew perfectly well that it was better not to interfere, otherwise everything could end as tragically as in that damned cave, and he did not want to repeat the previous mistakes. At that moment, he turned to his beast and said that they were going to look for a new beast, because the more allies he had, the stronger he would become. The cat only hissed furiously in response, clenching his paws, clearly not happy with what was happening and unhappy that he would have to share his owner's attention with another animal. Leewin hoped that the next creature would be much more obedient than this stubborn cat and would listen to commands without unnecessary whims. He grabbed the beast by the scruff of the neck, pressed it to himself and abruptly declared that it was time to stop messing around and get to work, because fate would not wait. Leewin strictly ordered the cat not to run away from him. Even though it was a low-level hidden dimension of ghostly creatures, it was still very dangerous. The guy was already beginning to think that soon he simply wouldn't be able to take it anymore and would hit this cat with such force that he would remember it for a long time. At that very moment, Leewin suddenly fell into some kind of sticky, barely noticeable thread, which instantly began to tighten his movements. Of course, he immediately threw off the sticky web from himself, trying not to give in to panic and remain calm in the current situation. A candy spider suddenly appeared in front of him, its eyes gleaming ominously in the dim light, as if foreshadowing impending danger. Leewin, without a second thought, turned around on the spot and started running, completely avoiding any attempts to engage in combat with such an opponent. However, the spider turned out to be level 8, and this was surprising. After all, such creatures, according to the rules, should not attack first without reason. Leewin couldn't figure out what exactly had gone wrong and assumed that perhaps he had somehow provoked the spider's aggression. At that very moment, he turned around, trying to better understand what was happening and the true reason for the attack. His beast pointed his finger downwards, as if expressing dissatisfaction and condemnation towards Leewin's decisions. In response to this, Leewin, filled with anger and irritation, called his beast a hairy bastard, not holding back his emotions. He then looked closely at his opponent, assessing his strength and looking for weak points for possible defense. It was at this moment that the spider rushed to attack again, leaving Leewin no time to think or plan. Leewin shouted loudly at his cat not to interfere in the fight, because his creature level was only 5, and in front of them stood a dangerous spider of the 8th level. At that very moment, the spider shot a sticky web at the cat, accurately hitting the target without the slightest miss. Of course, the web easily wrapped around the cat, giving him no chance to free himself and resist. Now Leewin finally understood why no self-respecting trapper wanted to sign a contract with this particular strawberry cat. He realized that if he did not take urgent and decisive action, his beast would not survive the night and would die. Leewin quickly picked up his cat in his arms and, without wasting a second, rushed away, trying to get out of the dangerous forest as quickly as possible. He already clearly saw that the exit from the forest was very close, and hope for salvation flashed through his head. But at that very moment, the spider threw a sticky web at him again, aiming straight at his back, trying to catch the enemy by surprise. Leewin tried his best to dodge, desperately wriggling and avoiding the sticky trap so as not to be pinned to the spot. The guy couldn't understand what had just happened. His thoughts were confused and full of anxiety. A deep chasm suddenly appeared in front of Leewin, threatening to cause them to fall and die. Of course, he didn't have time to brake, and he and the animal began to fall rapidly down into this terrible abyss. The spider stopped in time and did not follow them, as if realizing that pursuit was no longer meaningful. He simply stood frozen in place, watching what was happening, without taking any further action. Leewin and the animal fell down at that moment, losing control of the situation and falling rapidly. When the spider got wet with water, of course, it caused him great irritation and obvious discontent. Almost immediately, the water suddenly turned to ice, engulfing everything around with cold and causing everything to harden. At that very moment, there was a guy next to him who was quickly approaching, arousing interest and hope. This guy started to come closer and closer, as if trying to help or figure out what was going on. He then looked down, peering closely at the place where Leewin lay. Leewin was lying in some clearing, surrounded by forest and vegetation, not understanding where he was. He was completely confused and could not comprehend what was happening around him or where he was. He was in great pain and was clearly aware that he almost died in this dangerous situation. As it turned out, Leewin was sitting right on his animal, not immediately noticing it and trying to come to his senses. He immediately apologized to his beast for such a clumsy act and began to anxiously ask how he was feeling. Leewin said that they seemed to be somewhere in the Valley Club located on the western side of the mountains, and that it was already evening. It was already evening, and the soft golden light of the sun was gradually giving way to the dark blue shadow of the night. At this moment, the strawberry cat was desperately fighting with some strange sheep, who suddenly showed aggression. Leewin was puzzled, because the sheep always seemed to him to be gentle and cute creatures, and he did not understand why they suddenly attacked them. The guy realized that he shouldn't beat such animals cruelly, but sometimes the desire to do so became irresistible, especially when he saw their aggressive behavior. Suddenly, Leewin realized something and seemed to have an epiphany, realizing an important detail of what was happening. He noticed that one of the sheep was unconscious, but still had a rage in its eyes, and immediately realized that they needed to get out of there as quickly as possible before another disaster happened. They had to leave this place before the situation worsened and led to irreparable consequences. Leewin sternly told his beast to follow him, because they needed to leave as quickly as possible, without delaying even a minute. However, the cat suddenly turned around and went in the opposite direction, and the guy could not understand what was happening and why the animal was not obeying. Leewin loudly asked if the cat could even hear him, since he had just warned that it was very dangerous here. At that very moment, an old house suddenly appeared in the forest, which seemed completely out of place in this wild place. Leewin could not understand where this house could have come from and who could have built it in such a remote place. He carefully asked the cat if he had brought him here on purpose, suspecting a trick or some kind of trap. Suddenly, he felt an ominous aura coming from the house, as if dark and dangerous energy was emanating from the building itself. Leewin couldn't figure out what the thick red smoke was that was billowing around the house, giving the whole scene an eerie atmosphere. Then, in an instant, everything around the house changed dramatically, as if space and time in this place were subject to an alien law. The main character did not understand where this strange sound came from, similar to rustling and groans coming from inside the house. The boy carefully asked the cat if he was offering them to go inside this mysterious house, despite the alarming situation. The protagonist nodded in agreement, preparing for what awaited them inside. Then they slowly began to go inside, trying not to make unnecessary sounds and to be prepared for any surprises. As soon as they entered, the protagonist pinched his nose, feeling an unpleasant, disgusting smell that immediately alerted him. Leewin immediately realized that something was clearly wrong here, and danger could lurk at every step. The guy became curious about what this creepy place was and what was hidden behind its gloomy walls. At that moment he noticed some animal locked in a cage, and his heart sank with anxiety. He saw that it was an Arctic dog, and he could not understand whether it was really wounded or only the appearance of suffering. The main character doubted whether his beast would be able to break the cage lock and free the poor animal. He was at least pleased that the beast had done something useful in this difficult situation. Leewin began to carefully ask the dog if everything was okay, trying to somehow support the animal. The guy could not understand who could have done such a cruel thing to this poor animal, causing him horror and bewilderment. He only had a low-level healing potion with him, but he hoped it would be enough to help the dog. The main character began to calm the dog down, saying that he just wanted to help and asked him not to be afraid, so as not to worsen his condition. He carefully handed the potion to the dog so that he could drink it and feel relief. All the animals here were frightened and confused. They had clearly been subjected to terrible and cruel experiments, leaving deep wounds in their souls. Leewin wondered if this was perhaps the same guy who was with him in the cave back then and could have something to do with everything that was happening. After some time, the protagonist noticed another dog standing nearby, which seemed less injured. It seemed the potion had worked. The dog could already stand on its feet, but it looked at him as if it wanted to show him something important. The dog led him into the backyard, as if leading him to some secret place or hidden mystery that he wanted to reveal. The main character looked around with interest. It was either the backyard of the house, or perhaps a dark and damp basement with many mysteries. The smell here was even more terrible, creating the feeling that someone had been killed somewhere very recently. Then they slowly began to enter inside, cautiously and wary. The main character asked the dog to sit down, trying to understand what was unusual and why they were brought here. At that very moment, someone was secretly watching them from the shadows. Just at that moment, a certain creature began to appear, slowly taking shape. The main character decisively entered the fight to save the strawberry cat from danger. Then the main character returned back, carefully watching what was happening around. The creature continued to stare at him, not hiding its interest or threat. The boy began to understand that this creature could be a bloodhound, a hunting dog with unusual abilities. It was a ghostly creature of the second phase, a bloodthirsty dog, threatening and dangerous. His level was quite high, as much as 32. He was in a state of rage, seriously injured, bleeding and poisoned. The main character noticed a strange object hanging around the creature's neck. He noticed that the dog was chained and possibly imprisoned in that very place. The main character was surprised when the dog suddenly attacked him, not understanding whether he was attacking or wanted to somehow attract attention. However, it soon turned out that the dog was not attacking at all, but was simply trying to show or warn something. The main character was wondering how this could even be possible. At that moment, the dog barked loudly, as if insistently calling on the guy to pay attention to him. The main character asked the strawberry cat if he was calling him to come to him. The guy agreed and said that he would come, but only if the dog promised not to attack when approached. Then a strange but important conversation began between them, trying to understand each other. The main character began to approach forward carefully and slowly, without losing his vigilance. Then he noticed a book nearby and wondered what it could be. The guy became curious if there were any records of the experiments that were conducted here. The book said that on the first day they finally managed to catch new test subjects, 2 ice dogs, presumably a mother and her cub, and how lucky the researcher was. Day 9 of the experiment, the subject had turned into the largest extreme ice dog that ate other ghost beasts, and the researcher was looking forward to its further transformation. Day 15 of the experiment, this subject is difficult to control, its will is very strong, but after the researcher beat the puppy in front of her, he finally managed to make her angry. Day 20, the puppy was still alive, which was great, because now he could wait for the machine to evolve into a bloodthirsty hound, and then force it to eat its own son, which might cause unexpected changes. Leewin knew that there might be a monster, but he didn't think that things would turn out this way. The main character said that he is not afraid and will definitely help get out of here. He asked the cat to break the chain, while he himself worked on the creature's collar. At that moment the cat struck the iron chain with force and determination. The main character looked at him in surprise, not believing that the cat was actually obeying his command. However, this was not the main thing yet. First they needed to get the bloodthirsty dog out of captivity. The protagonist did everything he could to free her, without retreating a single step. If it weren't for his experience in the mines, the process would have taken him much more time and effort. The dog immediately began to thank him, trying to explain that she understood the situation and asked him not to worry, because she was just going to rest a little. The protagonist realized that he had to free the last piece of chain that was attached to her leg. Just at that moment the dog suddenly pounced on him. The guy froze, trying to figure out what she was going to do. Then he heard someone's voices approaching them from afar. The main character told the cat to hide so that he would remain safe. He also ordered the dog to wrap the body in a chain to prevent anyone from suspecting their intentions. Just at that moment, the main character watched as a man fell down the stairs nearby. This man asked not to kill him and swore that he would not tell anyone about what was happening. The protagonist realized that in front of him was the tamer of the ghostly beasts, whom they met at the entrance to the secret forest, and was surprised how he ended up here at all. At that tense moment, the man was trembling with the deepest fear of man. It turned out to be the same blonde man who claimed to show more mercy to people than to animals. The protagonist immediately recognized the guy who talked about the ghostly beasts of the second phase in his mysterious laboratory in the forest. The man wondered why the usually obedient ice dog was acting so aggressively today and asked if it was related to the boy's actions. It was known that in this forest he had sprayed a large amount of blood rose pollen, which caused the ghostly beasts to go into fits of rage and make them attack each other. The protagonist finally understood what that strange red smoke coming from outside meant. The guy continued to apologize and swore that he would remain silent, but if he did not return alive, an investigation would begin into what happened. He begged the man to the last, not giving up hope of salvation. The guy called the situation too expensive, because in the secret region, the death of a ghost beast tamer was considered a common thing, and no one paid attention to it. He warned that people left without protection would become easy prey for animals. The protagonist realized that he needed to take urgent measures and act decisively. He decided to take the boy's child first and bring reinforcements while he tried to contain the beast, if he had enough strength. At that very moment, the ice dog suddenly went into a furious rage. The guy tried to figure out why the dog was growling despite the fact that he brought her food in an attempt to calm her down. However, the dog continued to growl and ignored all his attempts. The guy assumed that the dog was reacting this way because he had just killed a man right in front of her eyes. The protagonist felt as if he had run into an invisible ice wall. He quickly realized where this ice barrier in the forest could have come from. Leewin noticed a guardian looming over them, an ice-type Phase 2 ghost beast that resembled an ice demon flower. The guy realized that the uninvited guest had not been caught. He ordered his beast to instantly freeze his opponent's legs, hoping for a quick and effective block. To his surprise, the beast began to carry out this order without the slightest delay, concentrating its power on the target. Leewin felt a sharp, piercing pain in his legs, as if icy needles were piercing every muscle and tendon. Following this, the guy, without thinking, shot straight at the attacker, trying to stop his advance. The protagonist stood up to protect the ice dog, covering it with his body and trying to minimize the threat to his ally. When the shot, contrary to expectations, had no effect, he wondered what was going on and why the weapon was powerless. At that very moment, the dog's mother appeared, impressive and dangerous, radiating threat and strength at the same time. The guy couldn't believe his eyes, because she somehow managed to escape from captivity, despite all the obstacles. He wondered if Lee had helped when accidentally hurt her by his actions or presence in this place. Realizing the seriousness of the situation, the guy realized that this mad dog could bite everyone who was nearby without the slightest pity. Leewin didn't think long, deciding that it was time to act together, otherwise the consequences would be catastrophic. Meanwhile, the dog continued to growl and show its aggression, preparing for a new attack on everyone present. The boy ordered the ice demon flower to block the dog's movement, hoping to protect and restrain the enemy. However, the dog easily bit the flower and broke its defense, demonstrating its incredible strength and steadfastness. The guy realized that all his efforts were pointless against this rage, and now they would have to look for other ways to fight. Leewin noticed that the ice around the flower began to melt and gradually disappear, as if the power of heat was defeating his magic. He called on other animals to come out of hiding and destroy the mad dog together, hoping for their support and unity. The animals stood up to protect the main character, ready to fight to the last, despite fear and danger. The dog began to fight them desperately, showing incredible fury and strength in every attack. She easily dealt with the attackers without experiencing any difficulties and demonstrating her superiority. The animals were very frightened and confused, realizing that they had encountered something much more dangerous than they expected. They looked at the boy who ordered them to go forward, warning them that if they did not, they would regret their decision to spare their lives. Despite their fear, the animals rushed to attack the dog, desperately trying to stop its destructive rage. The snakes were able to bite the beast, trying to somehow slow down its advance and weaken it. The guy believed that this bite would help to restrain the rabid animal for a short time and give them time to maneuver. Leewin rushed after the dog, loudly demanding that it not try to run away or hide from him. Then he turned to the strawberry cat, expecting his help in the difficult situation. But the cat suddenly attacked the guy from behind, causing him to lose his balance and concentration for a moment. There was simply no way to escape from this unexpected attack, and Leewin had to react quickly. The guy made it clear that he would not allow her to hide and leave so easily after everything that had happened, despite the betrayal. He began to say that Leewin could have waited at least a minute and saw no reason to run away in such haste and fuss. Leewin noticed that the guy had felt something and warned everyone not to interfere with him, otherwise the consequences would be serious. The guy started shouting loudly that they all needed to breathe and stay calm, otherwise the situation would become catastrophic and uncontrollable. Leewin raised his head and immediately realized that there was a thick red smoke hanging above them, which was quickly spreading throughout the forest. He realized that he was doing the wrong thing, because under the influence of this smoke, the ghostly beasts fall into a furious and insane state, becoming even more dangerous. Indeed, All the animals around immediately became enraged and began to behave aggressively, creating chaos and a threat to everyone present. Leewin grabbed the guy by the shoulders and said that not only was he destroying all the ghost beasts around him, but he himself was doomed to die. He was a real madman who was putting everyone at risk. The guy asked in response if Lee thought that he is as stupid and reckless as he is, thus causing a new conflict. At that very moment, the boy found himself locked in a cage, as if trapped in a trap from which there was no easy way out. He started shouting that only the two of them would die here, and that no one else was really in danger, trying to convince everyone that he was right. Leewin noted that the cow was a greedy and unbalanced hound that had gone completely mad under the influence of smoke. At that moment she was holding some small animal in her mouth, not letting go of it. Leewin paid special attention to her behavior, realizing the danger of the situation. The guy realized that he needed to get out of here as quickly as possible before the two animals became even more enraged. Leewin began to run quickly, trying to get away from the danger zone. But at that moment his legs suddenly froze, making it impossible for him to move. The guy noticed that this little animal was still alive and posed a threat. The hound was already unstoppable, heading straight towards the guy with the intention of attacking. Leewin prepared himself for the worst, expecting inevitable death. At this critical moment, the ice dog suddenly barked at his mother, getting her attention. The hound immediately noticed the sudden sound that came nearby and paused for a moment, assessing the situation. However, after a few seconds, she decided to attack, not wanting to miss the moment to attack. As it turned out, the beast quickly rushed at the main character, but the ice that instantly formed around him helped him to free himself from the freeze and avoid danger. At this moment, Leewin noticed that the strawberry cat suddenly rose into the air, and he immediately realized that what was in front of him was an unloaded warrior spirit, ready to act. This spirit was already fully prepared, focused and ready to strike a powerful blow, about to begin the attack. At that very moment, the spirit used a special technique, and a huge, blindingly bright beam of light appeared in the air, which immediately attracted the attention of everyone present. The beam of light was incredibly powerful and activated a nearby transformer, starting a chain reaction of energy. This was followed by a powerful explosion that shook everything around, causing the ground to tremble underfoot. The blast was so powerful that it blew through the roof of the house where the events took place, leaving a gaping hole and pieces of debris. As a result, a huge hole appeared in the backyard, which was visible even from the outside and left no doubt about the scale of the destruction. The guy tried to understand with surprise and bewilderment how such a catastrophe happened and what caused it. Leewin approached him confidently and calmly said that now it was his turn to take part in the battle and prove his strength. The guy began to apologize, admitting his mistake and begging for mercy, promising that he would never make such mistakes again. He assured that he would give Leewin all his ghostly beasts if he showed mercy and set him free. At the same time, the guy doubted whether the hunters and ghostly animals he killed could really act the way he hoped and assumed. The guy tried to continue speaking, but Leewin abruptly interrupted him, not allowing him to develop his thought and get distracted from the main point. He stated that even if the guy killed him, he still wouldn't be able to escape because he would definitely be caught and sent to prison. Leewin admitted that this statement was completely true and beyond doubt. However, the death of one or two trappers in such a dangerous area will not arouse much attention or suspicion among those around them. The boy was noticeably nervous, realizing that the situation was exactly as Leewin had said, and that he had no chance of changing the course of events. He began calling the protagonist a bastard and making various assumptions about his true intentions, trying to justify his behavior. Leewin decided it was time to end this argument, and the hound quickly headed towards the boy, ready to deliver the decisive blow. Naturally, the guy died instantly under the onslaught of the beast, without even having time to resist. Leewin turned to the strawberry cat, saying that it was time to move on and not waste time. At that very moment, the hound suddenly stopped the protagonist, as if sensing something important and significant. Leewin asked her carefully what was the matter and why she suddenly stopped, showing interest and caution. After this, the beast bowed to Leewin and pushed the small cub towards him, as if asking for help. Leewin asked if she really wanted him to help and take care of this little creature. The bloodthirsty hound was on the verge of death, and there was no known treatment available for it at that moment. Leewin agreed to help without hesitation and immediately began treating the animal using all the skills available to him. He promised that he would take care of the baby, would not leave him without attention for a minute and would do everything possible to save him. After that, they exchanged glances full of regret and warmth, as if saying goodbye to each other. The hound continued to look closely at her little cub, as if protecting him and defending him from all possible dangers. During the day, they had already left the portal, and Leewin was wondering how to properly formalize the contract with these two ghostly beasts so that everything would be legal and reliable. He tried all the methods he found on the internet, but none of them gave the expected result or worked properly. Okay, I'll deal with the contract later, because this little guy is clearly very tired and needs rest to gain strength for the upcoming tests. To evolve a dog, you needed an ice crystal, 10 frost branches, and 1 evolution crystal. It seemed like they weren't that hard to get up to this point. Leewin couldn't figure out what was going on with this cat. Apparently it required 99 ice crystals, 99 crimson cloud crystals, 99 thunder crystals, and 1 evolution crystal. Leewin thought that there must have been some mistake here. However, the cat only needed 1 evolution crystal, and he couldn't figure out whether to consider this a stroke of luck or a curse. At this point, some guy was discussing, or someone else was hearing, that there had been more and more deaths in the mines lately, and that there was nothing strange about it, since a lot of trappers were dying in the secret territories too. Naturally, this immediately interested the main character. Leewin approached him and asked if they could tell him more about what exactly was going on in the mines. One of the guys finally made up his mind and agreed to tell him the whole truth, which he had been hiding from others for a long time. At that very moment, the same wolf that had recently appeared and was already terrifying everyone was hunting people in the mine. This wolf was a new creation and grew mercilessly, devouring all the people it killed, becoming stronger every day. He showed no mercy and mercilessly killed everyone who came his way, leaving no one alive. The guy was telling how incredibly lucky he was that the wolf left him alive, because finding such an obedient and loyal dog like her is a great rarity. At that moment, Wang bowed to the guy with respect and said that he was glad to serve him and was ready to carry out any orders without hesitation. The guy noted that, thanks to Van's help, he managed to kill more than 10 miners, and the level of his nightmare wolf increased significantly, to which the man replied that this was the maximum he was capable of now. The boy extended his hand to Wang and said that he wanted to give him something special, a ghost beast, which was an award from the organization for outstanding achievements. The man was surprised by this gift and asked if he could now become a trapper and receive similar privileges. The guy confidently replied that, of course, the organization always has a positive attitude towards those who make a significant contribution and show themselves in their work. The man began to thank him even more for the opportunity he had been given and for the support he had received at this important moment. The guy told everyone not to be late and warned that tomorrow they needed to bring as many people as possible to complete a very important and responsible task. The next day they arrived at the timber mine, carefully preparing for a new operation and assessing the situation around them. Van noticed a strange man there, who immediately attracted his attention with his unusual behavior and appearance. He came closer to him and greeted him, showing friendliness and a willingness to communicate. Leewin immediately realized that the person in front of him was Wang Jiangguo. The man started complaining that everything was going badly, he was a newbie, and then pestered them by name and said that Foreman Van and Gula Boy had some hard work to do today. Leewin turned and looked at him carefully, trying to understand the situation. At that moment, a girl appeared and addressed him directly. She asked why he was so disrespectful to Foreman Wang. The girl introduced herself as Chen Li and said that she was going with Wang's brigade to extract resources. The protagonist thought that this girl might be crazy. Why take a child with you to such a dangerous place? The guy began to explain that miners were prohibited from going down into the mine, but the girl fiercely objected that she was already an adult and could decide for herself. The man said that everyone was ready and they began to descend into the mine. Leewin couldn't figure out if this was really the mine where people were dying. He felt a responsibility to find out the truth about the mysterious murders and was sure that if he could do it, he would be proud of himself and would no longer be looked down upon by these guys. He noticed the girl's tense face and wondered if this was her first time going down into the mine. The man then reported that the brothers had gone ahead to check the route. After that, everyone began to enter the mine, plunging into darkness and the unknown. Once again, Leewin found himself in this familiar place, feeling the familiar atmosphere. He hoped that his alarming suspicions about this man would not be confirmed and that the situation would not be so serious. Wang began to explain to the others that he had a crimson cloud stone in his hand that needed to be collected today, so everyone should split into groups, each of which should include at least 2 people. If something unexpected happens during mining, call for help immediately, after which you can begin work. At this point, everyone began to actively look for partners to unite into teams for effective work. The girl at this time simply walked slowly between them, as if choosing with whom to unite. Leewin noticed her and paid close attention to her, becoming interested in her behavior. He told her that if she couldn't find a mate and didn't want to unite with him, then so be it. In response, the girl angrily asked who told him that, adding that she was very strong and, in her opinion, no one wanted to be in the same group with him. Leewin calmly replied that since she was against it, he would just go and ask someone else. At that moment she stopped him and said that she felt sorry for him, so she was ready to help and hoped that he would not interfere. Wen's interest and he listened carefully. He asked Chen Li if this was her first time here, to which she replied that yes, but he shouldn't worry, she was quite confident in her abilities. However, Leewin meant something completely different, he simply wanted to warn her to stay away from Wang Jiangguo for his own safety. She asked him what he was thinking about, whether he knew anything important or how. Leewin replied that he was simply warning her, and it was her choice whether to listen or not. The miner's work turned out to be much harder than she had originally expected. Leewin came up behind her and said that she had worked hard and could now rest a little. At that moment they heard a loud sound that pierced the silence around them. The guy immediately realized that something serious had happened, that there was clearly some kind of problem. Leewin realized that they had to hurry, and the two of them ran towards the direction from which the strange noise was coming. Soon they stopped abruptly and were deeply surprised by what they saw. Directly in front of them were huge crystals, sparkling in the dim light of the mine. The guys immediately began to unload what they had found, realizing how rich they were now. One of them shouted that it was he who dug up these crystals, and when the money appears, he will get the largest share. He said that now they were rich, because such a huge crystal was worth at least 5 million, and when their extraction was finished, they would be able to treat everyone. Wang once again thought about having all these stones just for him. Fortunately, there was a ghost beast tamer nearby who was going to prepare the material for evolution, and he would definitely take this huge crystal for himself. Wang knew that he needed to kill this tamer and take everything for himself in order to become stronger soon. The guy approached the man and said that according to the rules, he gets 60% of the production, 10% goes to the mining association, and the remaining 30% is divided among everyone else. The man remained silent and only looked at him sternly. But then, with a slight smile on his face, he said that the guy was completely right, and it was at that moment that the man killed him in 1 second. The guy, of course, expected this, but still couldn't do anything. After the impact, he simply collapsed to the ground. Everyone present was shocked and did not understand why the man killed the guy. The man declared that the crystal now belonged only to him and asked if anyone had any objections. Leewin decided that since the man had already lost his humanity, he was not to blame for what happened. Then he shouted loudly at him, trying to get his attention. The man asked in bewilderment what kind of police had appeared here and whether he had really been exposed. At that moment, the girl pulled out a gun and ordered them to immediately drop the weapon, which surprised everyone. It turned out that the police had been with them from the very beginning, which was a great success, because now the chances of salvation had increased. The man was stunned, not expecting that this fellow countrywoman would have a gun. The girl demanded that the victim's wound be immediately bandaged and an ambulance be called. Who would have thought that she was actually a police officer? Now victory was on her side. She began to ask the man if he really thought his crimes would go unpunished. The protagonist felt that something was wrong, because this man would not give up just like that. After that he began to laugh, as if anticipating something sinister. Leewin realized that the situation was getting worse and the girl was now in danger. It was at that moment that someone or something suddenly attacked her. She didn't have time to do anything in response. However, she still managed to jump back and avoid a direct blow. The girl could not understand what was happening and why she suddenly could not move. At that moment, she saw a ghostly beast in front of her, a poisonous centipede. The next stage of evolution, the king of poisonous centipedes, level 3. The man laughed and said that she had underestimated him, and of course he was prepared for such a turn of events. He asked if she liked playing secrets, but with a lag, because today she would disappear. The girl started screaming for the others to leave quickly. The man started shouting for everyone to stop immediately. He threatened to kill anyone who moved from the spot. He promised that if he killed this policewoman, the rest would be able to leave here alive and tell what happened. The girl responded by telling no one to believe him, because there were only 3 bullets left in the gun, and he would not be able to kill everyone, so someone would definitely manage to escape and call for reinforcements, and he would certainly be punished. The man told them not to be naive. One of them will change and get a bullet. Now they are in the same position. You need to kill someone to save your life. That's human nature. It was at the most inopportune and unexpected moment that he suddenly received a powerful blow to the face, which immediately knocked him off balance and knocked him to the ground. It turned out to be Leewin himself, a man who appeared unexpectedly and acted with surprising determination and speed, causing everyone to watch what was happening with great tension. The blow was so strong and precise that the man flew very far, hitting the ground with a crash and almost losing consciousness from surprise. The protagonist slowly and deliberately began to remove his hood, while calmly addressing Wang Jungguo and saying that they had not seen each other for a long time and a lot had changed in their lives during this time. He finally removed the hood, completely revealing his face, and looked closely at the man, asking an important question. Did he recognize him after all those events and trials? The man asked with obvious surprise and slight disbelief if this guy really was alive and had managed to survive despite all the mortal dangers. The main character calmly and even with a little smile asked if he had guessed beforehand that he had not died and still remained alive after everything he had experienced. That very night, the man planned to burn his sister, but never received any news about this incident, which caused him serious doubts and made him think. That's why he thought the guy was probably alive. After all, his life had been so hard and painful. He had been hit 3 times, found a car where he had been beaten long and cruelly with shovels, but despite everything, he had managed to survive and stay alive. No one could understand how they should act now and what to do, because the police were powerless even to protect themselves, and the guy thought for a moment that they were already saved, rejoicing at this thought much earlier than it was time. The man asked Rose if she had said that in order to survive in this difficult situation, she needed to kill these two enemies and get rid of them at any cost. He thus forces them to become his accomplices and submit to his will, becoming participants in his dangerous plans and actions. The man said that they were all in the same boat and he would have no reason to kill them if they cooperated, and asked why they were still hesitating and not doing it. Everyone immediately realized that they seemed to have no choice but to submit to the circumstances and take part in what was happening. The guy was immediately surrounded by people ready to carry out the man's orders and take complete control of the situation, not giving him any room to maneuver. The main character tried to calm everyone present, telling them not to worry and reminding them that everyone has the right to make any decision, no matter how difficult and painful it may be. After all, the law of the jungle always works and no one can completely avoid the consequences of their actions, especially in such dangerous and unstable conditions. Then the guy noticed something unusual and something that caught his eye, which immediately made him surprised and wary. The man could not understand whether everyone had gone crazy or something serious was happening, because their behavior seemed strange and completely illogical in this situation. He said that they couldn't want death, and let him not talk nonsense, because they were not such cowards as to kill a child for the sake of saving him, but let the kid quickly bring in this girl, and the adults themselves would sort out the rest. The main character was very surprised when he saw this whole scene and the behavior of those present, which was very different from what he expected to see in such a tense situation. The man began to say that since they were no longer seeking death and were not suicidal, he was not responsible for what would happen next and what it might lead to. Let them die on their own, the disobedient and stubborn fools who cannot be controlled and who, by their actions, only make the situation worse. The man fired and the bullet flew between them, threatening but not harming anyone present, only increasing the tension. At that very moment, it turned out that someone or something unexpectedly shot right at him, completely changing the course of events and putting everyone in a state of shock. None of those present could understand what exactly had happened and who exactly had fired. It came as a complete surprise to everyone without exception. The man looked into the distance in fear, unable to hide his fear and confusion in the face of the unknown threat. He asked with disbelief whether the main character was really the same beast hunter about whom there are legends and whom everyone fears. This young boy actually turned out to be the trapper, which was great news, because now they could hope for salvation and victory. The man asked if they called the dog a ghostly beast and if he was ready to accept it into his ranks to fight the enemies. He called out to the poisonous centipede with orders to immediately attack and destroy these animals in order to eliminate the threat once and for all. After this, the poisonous centipede quickly and furiously began to attack people, sowing fear and chaos among them and making everyone tense. The protagonist gave the command to the dog to hold back the poison coming from the centipede in order to prevent it from spreading and reduce the danger to everyone present. The dog immediately began to fight the man, demonstrating his loyalty and fighting skills in this tense confrontation. She began to emit ice and effectively hold back the poison as the protagonist requested, slowing down the enemy's advance and protecting her allies. The ice wall then completely reached the enemy, creating a serious obstacle for him and depriving him of the opportunity to attack freely. But the centipede was able to jump up in time and avoid serious damage, continuing the fight and trying to find new tactics for victory. After that, she literally crawled underground, hiding from the sight of everyone present and preparing for a new attack from an unexpected place. Everyone was amazed that this insect could move so quickly and unnoticed underground, while Leewin was extremely careful and tried to anticipate its actions. The man began to laugh, demonstrating confidence in his victory and disdain for what was happening, as if everything had already been decided. He told the protagonist that if he got down on his knees and started begging for mercy, he might save his life and avoid a painful death. The guy firmly stated that no prayer or request would help, and he was ready to fight to the end, without giving up or retreating. The man said he appreciated his kindness, but ordered the poisonous centipede to mercilessly kill the boy who stood in his way. The protagonist turned back and saw that the centipede began to move quickly and threateningly towards him, preparing for the next attack. Suddenly she jumped out right in front of him, forcing him to react immediately and use all his agility and ingenuity to defend himself. At this critical moment, the strawberry cat intervened, turning out to be a very timely and unexpected support for the main character. He helped to repel a vicious attack by a poisonous centipede, preventing its dangerous actions and saving the boy's life from certain death. The centipede was left lying on the ground, temporarily immobilized and unable to continue the fight, which gave it time to catch its breath. The man was deeply shocked and greatly surprised that the strawberry cat had so easily infected and neutralized his centipede, ruining his plans. The main character has already firmly stated that he does not intend to protect this man and does not intend to enter into any kind of cooperation with him. The man could not understand where the main character suddenly got a second ghostly beast from, which completely changed the balance of power in the situation as a whole. The protagonist then quickly grabbed a sharp and heavy tool lying on the ground, preparing to deliver the decisive blow. After that, the guy swung with complete confidence and firm intention, saying that he was now definitely dead and could not cause harm. At the most critical moment, a girl suddenly ran up to him from behind and quickly began to stop him, not allowing him to take the fatal step. She insistently and with anxiety in her voice asked him not to kill the man, explaining that if he did, there would be no turning back, and it would be better for him to allow her to administer the deserved punishment herself. The protagonist calmly replied that he understood her request and suggested that she stand up, otherwise he would have nothing to breathe with her position leaning on him. The strawberry cat looked at both of them strangely and attentively, given the unusual position of the girl, who was barely holding on, leaning on the guy. The guy started screaming loudly with joy and relief that they were finally saved and were now truly safe, although he felt a little sorry for the stones that were lost. The girl actually took control of the man and arrested him, as she had promised earlier, showing firmness and determination. She stated that she was going to take him to the bureau for further investigation and prosecution of his crimes. She then asked the guy where he intended to go next and said that he needed to come with her to tell her in detail everything that had happened. She allowed the rest to leave, giving them the opportunity to leave without threats or fears. At that very moment, a strong and sudden earthquake began, causing everyone around to instantly become alert. The protagonist noticed that the wall was seriously damaged and an accident could happen at any second, so he warned that everyone urgently needed to run, saving lives. The mine began to collapse rapidly, and everyone without exception immediately rushed to flee in panic and haste, escaping from the impending danger. Rocks fell almost on the heads of the workers, creating a mortal threat to anyone who remained in place. The girl felt that something was wrong with her body. She could hardly move, despite all her efforts, and did not understand what was happening to her at all. At that very moment, a huge rock flew at her from above with incredible speed, threatening fatal injury. Fortunately, the main character noticed this in time and managed to put his hand out in time, saving the girl from imminent death. He ordered his animals to first help the girl get out of the dangerous place, and he himself promised to catch up with them later. The protagonist told the girl not to waste time and hurry. He would bring Wang Jungguo to her for support. At that moment, huge stones began to fall behind him, threatening to end his life at any second. And right at that very second the passage was completely blocked, blocking the way to the exit. The girl started screaming loudly at the guy, anxiously asking if he was okay, and he replied that yes, he should leave quickly, he would definitely find a way to get out. At that moment, the man simply laughed, as if enjoying their despair and hopelessness. He said that the guy tried his best to kill him, but ended up in the same trap with him, and now they were both doomed to die. Leewin warned that he would repeat it again, and the guy should not expect any mercy or leniency. He said he would kill him right away because there were too many extra eyes left around now and no one would be able to intervene. The man asked fearfully what they were talking about and why the situation had become so dangerous. The protagonist stayed behind to finish him off, holding a pistol in his hands, preparing for the decisive shot. He said that the accident in the mines was his doing, that's true, and that he was going to put a stop to it. The guy asked why the man needed all this at all and what goal he was pursuing. The man admitted that he was being forced to participate in the murders, and if he did not help, he would tell everyone that he was the real killer. The protagonist asked if the man was talking about the very same beast hunter who was behind all this. The man confirmed this and begged not to kill him, promising to help in every way to catch the beast hunter and reveal the truth. Leewin coldly replied that a place in hell had long been prepared for him, and he would not escape the punishment he deserved. The protagonist instantly shot at the huge rock that was hanging right above them, trying to destroy the threat. The man watched the stone closely, assessing its movement and trying to figure out how to avoid the imminent danger. He suddenly noticed that the stone was flying straight at him at incredible speed, and he realized the seriousness of the situation. Within seconds, the stone crushed the man with great force, leaving him no chance of escape. The protagonist said with cold determination that now it was his turn to pray for salvation, since everything had turned out differently. Finally, he contemptuously called the man a worthless person, emphasizing his weakness and powerlessness. At that very moment, something strange and inexplicable began to emanate from the man, causing everyone present to tense up. It was a mysterious energy that seeped through the cracks in the stones, gradually filling the space around them. Outside the cave, people were desperately trying to help the protagonist get out, clearing away rubble and shouting to each other. The girl encouraged everyone to work faster and harder, because the protagonist and Wang Jungguo were still inside the cave. The main character's animals, showing incredible strength and endurance, also tirelessly helped, not sparing themselves. At that moment, the strawberry cat noticed a strange energy coming from the depths of the cave and tensed up in alarm. This energy suddenly directed itself straight at him, causing a surprising and painful reaction in the cat. He began to experience unbearable pain, as if something inside him was breaking and piercing him from the inside. Everyone immediately noticed that the boy's ghostly beast had lost consciousness, most likely due to lack of air and severe stress. They quickly carried him to a safe place nearby and advised him to rest to regain his strength. Everyone assured the animal not to worry and promised that they would definitely save his owner, no matter what. At the same time, night fell in the hospital, and the atmosphere became tense and viscous. The main character suddenly woke up from a deep sleep, feeling a sharp change in the environment and air around him. The guy was surprised to find himself in a hospital room, surrounded by unfamiliar walls and devices. Right next to him he saw two of his ghostly beasts, who were carefully observing his condition. He felt relieved that these two were nearby, because without them, he would have already been buried along with the mine and Wang Jiangguo. At that moment, someone carefully asked him if he had finally woken up after the serious injury. A woman approached him, and the main character asked if she was a doctor or someone else. She asked him to introduce himself and explain that she held the position of vice chairman of the Association of Animal Trappers. The protagonist was very surprised and asked if she was Liana, the vice chairwoman of the Beishi Hunters Association from Tianyuan City, to which the woman confirmed. He asked if she had any personal business with him or if this was just a visit for an official purpose. The woman replied that everything was correct, and her visit was directly related to his ghostly beasts and their status. They discovered that he did not have a trapper's license and was not registered with the association, so according to the rules, the ghost animals should be handed over to them. The main character realized that without his animals he would not be able to function normally and get out of the current situation, because he needs these creatures. Despite this, she had a proposal that could change everything. The association will give him the opportunity to take the trapper qualification exam, and if he passes, he will be able to keep the ghost beasts. The protagonist wondered what would happen if he failed. She replied that in that case he would have to keep trying until he passed the exam, leaving no other options. Leewin asked the deputy why he was given such an exceptional opportunity. The woman explained that she had heard about how, during the collapse, his ghostly beasts had worked hard to dig out the collapsed tunnel, saving his life. The main character clarified that it was precisely because of this that they decided to give them a chance, understanding its importance and potential. He suggested that these animals were not quite ordinary creatures, possessing special abilities. All wild animals are to some extent hostile to humans, and this is a general pattern in their nature. Only after the conclusion of an official contract between a person and a ghostly beast are the conditions for mutually beneficial cooperation created. In other words, without such an agreement the beast has no reason to help people. The woman was very interested in how it was possible that the ghostly beast saved him without a contract, which seemed almost impossible. The protagonist asked if she had any legal grounds or reasons for refusing, since he was smart enough and could become a full-fledged trapper. He himself noted with irony that he could rather be called a kind of rat than a real trapper, which softened the situation a little. The girl replied that this was just his own opinion and there was still much to prove. The protagonist agreed with this and asked when the exam would be scheduled. She said that she would wait until he fully recovered, and then he should contact her. Leewin asked if the people who remained in the mine and survived the collapse were okay. The woman warned him that he would soon find out about everything, saying this very loudly and noisily to attract attention. At this point, someone started shouting loudly and asking if he was okay, causing a commotion in the room. The lady officer asked him not to shout like that in the hospital ward, but despite this, she continued to worry and ask how the guy was feeling. The protagonist listened carefully and finally realized that this was the kind of loud and unbearable noise that they had been talking about earlier in conversations. The deputy chairperson said goodbye to him quietly, expressing a slight sadness and concern in her words. She grabbed him by the hair and sternly said that she was talking to him, but he seemed not to pay any attention to it, and also asked if he had accidentally hurt his head. The protagonist quickly realized that it would be better to pretend that he was losing consciousness again and fainting in order to avoid further trouble. At the same time, in a completely different building, completely different events were unfolding, which could have turned out to be no less important. The girl entered the chairman's office, holding important documents in her hands, and confidently approached him. She handed him carefully prepared lists of people who would be taking the trapper qualification exam this year, asking him to study them carefully. The man looked at her carefully and asked if the boy she had mentioned earlier was really among these candidates. The girl nodded and confirmed that yes, it was he who was told the exact time of the exam yesterday. The man noticed that they were talking for the first time in such a setting. There was no one around, and asked her not to be too serious, because in his opinion, the main thing now was to let the guy concentrate on work. She agreed with his words and added that she also really wanted to meet him in person as soon as possible. The man thought for a moment and quietly said to himself, which of the two of them would ultimately turn out to be a real nugget and be able to prove himself. At that very moment the phone rang and the man picked up the receiver to answer. As it turned out, the call came from the laboratory, where they were expecting important information. The man asked if there was any new information about the location of the object that had been sought for so long. They answered him that all the data was known and that the smart man was already on his way to his goal. The deputy chairman offered his assistance and asked if the chairman needed support in finding the escaped subject. He added that they should allow a SKUF like him to take on this dangerous task, since no one else would. The protagonist was surprised to see so many people come to the exam and realized that many of them really hoped to succeed this year. He glanced at the large hall where the trapper's license exam was to take place and felt a slight thrill of excitement. At that moment, someone started calling his name, getting his attention. Everyone was surprised that the protagonist actually came, and he immediately recognized Old Man Gao and Old Man Lu among those present. They told him that he had disappeared after finishing his studies. They had called him on his home phone, but his sister had told them that he had been sent to work in the mines. They had agreed that they would all become trappers together, but he had already decided to give up on their shared dream. The main character honestly admitted that something serious had happened to him, which is why he urgently needed money. The guy said that it was good when he solved problems with him, because they were like brothers, and he considered the others as strangers. The main character replied that everything was much more complicated and confusing. He then turned his attention to the ghostly beasts and wondered if he had already become a full-fledged trapper. Leewin replied that he could not say for sure yet. The guy asked in surprise how this was possible, because he could see that the trapper was always next to him. Leewin explained that everything was true, but for some reason it was impossible to sign a contract with this cat, and this remained a mystery. Everyone couldn't understand how this could have happened. Had he bought low-quality materials or had the seller slipped him a fake? But if you think about it, maybe that's exactly how things really are. At that moment, an announcement was made that the trapper's license examination was about to begin. All participants were asked to present their permit and proceed to the examination room. They were going towards their dream, and no one should worry, because they will always be there and will definitely help the main character. All participants were warmly welcomed to the exam, and the presenter briefly described the three main stages of the test. The first stage is a basic knowledge test, during which several ghostly beasts will be shown. Participants will need to write down everything they know about them in detail, and the more detailed they are, the higher the score. The second stage is signing a contract. Participants will be able to use their own ghost animal or purchase a new one here to sign a contract with. Upon successful completion of the stage, they will move on to the next one. And finally, the third stage is a battle in which you need to control your ghost beast and fight with two other participants. The one who wins 3 fights moves on. Anyone who successfully passes all 3 tests will be qualified as a first-degree trapper and will also be able to take advantage of some significant privileges and opportunities. And so, the exam officially began. The tension in the room increased noticeably. All participants were asked to write down everything they knew about the 3 animals presented, without missing the slightest detail. Everyone immediately became nervous, realizing how difficult the questions were. Last year there was no such tension, and everything went much easier. Of course, the main character knew all the characteristics and detailed information about the animals, and felt as if he was writing an exam with a book at hand. He became curious about how Gao and Lu were coping with the task, since it seemed like they shouldn't have any problems. When he looked at them, he realized that they had already given up and left the room. Leewin told the other 2 to carefully write down everything he said, without missing a single detail. They immediately said that he was a good guy, and that his brothers were no better. 2 hours later, the results of the first test were announced. The ready participants, whose names she would call, would move on to the next stage. The rest should continue to prepare diligently to pass next year. The girls started calling Zhang Sangguo, Li Sibao, Wang Wuhu, Lu Hao, Gao Cheng. Of course, the guys immediately started to rejoice and tell their friend that he is incredible. Today he is like a godfather to him. They do not want to be his godparents. Also passing were Li Sita, Yin Yipei, U Faisha, Ka Luo, Liao Danya, Huala. All of the above passed the test. No one understood what was going on, why they didn't name the guy. The ones below passed, so he couldn't fail the exam. Leewin couldn't understand what was going on. Could the system's answers be wrong? But old Lao and Luo had passed. Leewin asked if they had copied his answers accurately. Well, how can you copy word for word? He deliberately changed the wording so that the phrases would differ from his. Everyone does this when attributing. These are deliberate maneuvers. Leewin couldn't understand whether their changed answers were correct. The girl immediately started saying that she would like to recognize her people who scored the highest score. It was Leewin himself, and also Kai Irsha. At that moment, everyone turned their attention to the same guy who got the highest score for the first stage. Besides, the girl heard that he was taking the exam for the first time. His friends told him that he was now the center of attention because his older brother was a genius. Leewin told them to stop. He was just lucky. The guy didn't understand what nonsense this was. Luck is already part of one's strength. That's exactly it. Why be more modest? At that moment, someone approached him and asked if he was Li Wenxuan. It was actually Kai Irsha. Leewin realized that this was a girl who had received the highest score, just like him. She started saying that she got the highest score. She wants to warn him. She got 100 points because that was the maximum. But he got that much because that was his limit. Does he understand her? The guy asked if those around him were provoking him, because next to him his brother looked very tall and this could influence him. She replied that those who simply copied were not even asked, and now they should force her to report on them. Leewin noticed her quiet but sincere trust coming from below at this moment. It was a patterned ice python, and its level was exactly 25. Leewin also wanted to warn him, because her ghost beast had some strange anomaly, so he advised her to double-check everything before signing the contract. The girl asked if he was thinking exactly this when he attacked her, although he knew perfectly well the state of his ghostly beasts, which were only good at cunning and dexterous techniques. Let him pray that they will meet her in a duel at one of the stages, where she will be cruelly disgraced in front of everyone. After some time, the girl went somewhere and sighed heavily, as if something was really bothering her. She started hitting herself in the face and telling herself to pull herself together, because she couldn't lose to anyone, she just had to be number one. She turned to Zhengfoer and said that they would try their best today, but there was clearly something wrong with her animal, and it was worrying. Candidate Zhang Sano and the mouse successfully signed the contract without any problems. Of course, the guy rejoiced at this event with all his heart. It seems like the second part of the exam was just a gift, and what kind of fool would come to the exam with a ghostly beast that doesn't obey its owner? Leewin mentally addressed his cat, asking if he could hear him and if he would not let him down at the most crucial moment. At that moment, the strawberry cat looked at him with slight attention and understanding. The girl announced that the next participant would be Leewin. His friends began to support him and loudly say that it was finally time for his big brother to come out. Leewin walked to the center of the hall, feeling all eyes on him. He understood that now everything would depend on his ghostly beast. He realized that it was time to start, and a new stage opened up for him. At that moment, the strawberry cat slammed his foot on the floor, as if he was going to show the seriousness of his intentions. He was putting an incredible effort to concentrate and get everything done right. The cat then abruptly hit the ground with his hands, causing surprise among everyone present. The guys started asking Leewin what was going on and why he was acting so strange. Leewin himself understood this, but he could not explain the reason. They couldn't believe that his high scores were just luck, because no one had ever heard of anyone failing this stage before, and everyone was witnessing a real historical moment. The girl asked to replace the ghost beast or at least try again, but Leewin replied that it was not worth it, he would just continue. Although the probability of successfully eliminating the dog contract was clearly higher, this time there was socialization support to eliminate first-class mistakes, and this contract was better. Perhaps such an opportunity will not arise again. The main character understood that no matter what, he had to sign a contract with this beast. He was told to continue, if the signing failed, to try again. The signing of the contract was again unsuccessful. Everyone around was dying laughing. The girl didn't expect that there were people with whom the ghostly beast simply didn't want to sign a contract, but the show was simply amazing. The protagonist, after some time, was breathing heavily, kneeling from fatigue and disappointment. At that moment, the girl declared that, as she had said, she had only gotten the highest score by luck, and let him get out of the way, because she would show real talent. She politely asked the teacher to allow her to proceed to the next stage of the exam. The teacher calmly agreed and gave her the go-ahead to begin the process of signing the contract. After some time, the girl was fully prepared and ready to begin her performance. She began to perform the necessary actions with concentration, carefully preparing to sign the contract. Her ghostly animal began the process of concluding the contract in sync with her. But at that very moment something completely unusual and unpredictable happened to the snake. The girl could not understand what exactly was happening and why her beast's behavior had changed so abruptly. The snake seemed to have gone crazy, and none of those present could explain the reason for such strange behavior. Suddenly, the beast unexpectedly tried to attack the teacher, which shocked everyone. Fortunately, the main character reacted instantly and managed to protect the teacher from the attack. He quickly jumped to the side with her, taking her to a safe place not far from the incident. He thought that the girl was acting too frivolously, since she should have checked everything in advance. It was a real disaster. It seemed that the ghostly beast had completely lost control, and someone urgently needed to come to the rescue. The girl was completely perplexed and could not understand what her snake was doing at that moment. The main character approached her and warned her not to approach the dangerous place, because her beast was now in critical condition. She confidently told him not to worry about her, because her ice cube would never harm a person. The girl began to speak herself, asking him to look at her carefully and try to understand what was happening. However, the beast completely ignored her and looked at her with a strange, cold and unfeeling gaze. She begged the beast to calm down and come closer, as if she were addressing him with a plea and hope. It was very reassuring, because she knew for sure that he heard her voice and felt her emotions. But at that very moment the snake suddenly attacked the girl with unprecedented fury. The girl did not expect such a turn of events at all and jumped back, hitting the wooden fences. Then the snake rushed straight at her, preparing to deliver the fatal blow. She was clearly going to bite the girl, creating a real threat to her life. The girl was confused and did not know whether she would be able to survive in this dangerous situation or die right there. At that moment, warm memories of her true nature and inner strength began to come to her. She recalled how her parents always told her that she should follow her older brother's example. She didn't want to change and categorically disagreed with this advice, preferring to go her own way. Her mother often told her to look at her brother and see how talented and hardworking he was, and that she should become better. Every day she heard the same thing. Brother, 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 as if training the ghost beasts was the only meaning, and she had to surpass it. She shouted to her beast, faster, patterned ice python, come on, show me what you can do. She kept reminding herself that now was not the time to rest, but to get up immediately and continue the fight. Sometimes she admitted to herself that everything was going well, but she still demanded more speed and determination from the beast. She didn't want to do this to her brother, because he should be stronger, although sometimes she felt his hidden hostility. It was at this moment that the strawberry cat suddenly decided to stand up for the girl, showing real courage. The protagonist asked the cat why he had stopped and ordered him to immediately move away from the line of fire. The girl was surprised that the guy was still nearby and carefully watching what was happening. At the same time, the snake continued its furious attack, showing no signs of stopping. The protagonist ordered the strawberry cat to carefully watch his movements and deftly dodge attacks. He then told the beast to duck to avoid the dangerous blow at the very last moment. The girl was surprised how this was possible, since they had not yet signed a contract, but for some reason the cat obeyed his instructions. It was a perfect opportunity to let the cat strike the snake in the vulnerable spot, right in the belly. At that very moment, the snake rushed towards the cat, preparing to deliver a fatal blow. The teacher watched everything that was happening closely, trying to understand how the situation would be resolved. At the most tense moment, men suddenly ran up to them and informed teacher Jinkai that they had received an urgent message and had arrived as reinforcements. They thanked the student for his help and asked him to provide them with the rest. "We must destroy this ice python as soon as possible," they told the girl, adding that they would not provide her with a new ghost beast later. She begged him with all her might not to kill her beast, assuring him that he had never behaved like that before and that there must be some other reason. The man considered this impossible, because no one would be able to tame the ghostly beast in such a state and remain safe. The main character shouted loudly that if they couldn't save her, then they should get out of the way. These ghostly beasts are now suffering greatly, they are treated as faulty equipment, they just want to get rid of them, not thinking that they are living creatures. The protagonist told the girl not to worry, he would do everything he could to contain her ice python. He called himself just a brat who didn't even make a contract with the ghost beast, and turned to the strawberry cat, saying that he was sure that he wanted to save her too. If the cat feels the same emotions and experiences as he does, then let him join forces and steadfastly resist with her, showing true unity and support. This really aroused genuine interest in the beast, who watched every movement and development of the situation around them with curiosity and attention. And it was at this very key moment that they were able to officially sign a contract, which became a turning point in their common history and destiny. The men were deeply shocked and could not understand how it was even possible to conclude such a contract under such unusual and tense circumstances. At that very moment, the cat fixed his gaze intently into the distance, watching what was happening with concentration and intently, as if anticipating important events. He then smoothly and confidently assumed a fighting stance, demonstrating his readiness to enter the battle and protect those around him. Of course, he was fully prepared and determined to decisively confront any enemy, not intending to give in one step. He decided to use one of his unique techniques to most effectively counter the attacking beast and turn the tide of the battle in his favor. The girl, with growing excitement and anxiety, asked what exactly was happening and what was actually happening around them at this critical moment. The man explained that the student Keirshi's phantom beast had gone berserk during the contract. The details were in the report, and the cause of this anomaly was still being investigated, and she was curious about how it was resolved. The man replied that the candidate had directed his phantom beast and defeated the berserk ice python. The woman asked what happened to the girl in the end and whether she was out of danger, to which she was answered in the affirmative. The woman didn't understand why the girl's phantom beast suddenly went out of control, whether it was connected with that escaped beast, after which she understood everything and said that they needed to talk in private. The man said that he obeyed, and thought about how this guy had been honored with an eternal conversation, and after Vice President Ban, it seemed that he was about to soar to the top. Whether he would interfere or not, he definitely shouldn't be touched, much less bothered, as the consequences could be unpredictable. The woman who had been watching what was happening addressed him with a serious and attentive tone in her voice. She said that every time she saw his actions and abilities demonstrated during the exam, she was genuinely surprised, and the Junior Beast Tamer certificate seemed to her too modest a reward for such talent. The main character laughed with a smile and modestly replied that he was just lucky, but she immediately warned him not to get cocky and to maintain a sense of proportion. Maintaining a cool head and being able to get out of such a sudden and dangerous situation with House is far from just luck, but real skill and endurance. She also noted that the certificate issued was the highest level she could award within her authority, and to get a higher one, he would have to pass an exam at the next level. The main character was genuinely surprised by such recognition and the new prospects that opened up before him. She expressed confidence that, thanks to his innate talents and perseverance, he would very soon be able to claim the title of Senior Beast Tamer. Since he was now officially a Beast Tamer, she already had a very important and responsible task for him that required immediate attention. Meanwhile, in some dark and abandoned building, where a tense atmosphere reigned, unknown events were unfolding. Something was rapidly developing, and the tension in the air was becoming palpable. The man shouted loudly to his subordinates, demanding that they move faster, leave no traces, and destroy everything to the ground, smashing the room to pieces. He would interrupt conversations and say that the phantom beasts and girls had already come out, and if he had known in advance, he would have added much more poison to make things more difficult. As for that strawberry cat tamer and the one holding back the rampaging leopard python, he wouldn't have gotten involved in that if he'd known who he was dealing with. The boss was informed that they had already destroyed everything that could be destroyed, and the place was left in complete disarray. After this, the group began to retreat, but suddenly one of them turned to his comrades to check the situation. Someone asked where they ran off to so quickly, leaving everything in such chaos and without due care. The young man did not understand how everything happened so quickly and asked who this man was who was chasing them and stopping them. But they did not understand that there was enough talk and that it was impossible to leave witnesses after such an incident. Following the words, they began shooting at him, but the guy seemed unperturbed and was not at all afraid of the bullets. They couldn't understand how this was possible, as if he was not a man at all, but some kind of supernatural object that was invulnerable and unshakable. The guy simply put on a bulletproof vest and calmly said that he was a ghost and that it was time for him to finally die, but he was not afraid of death. At that moment, he abruptly grabbed the attacker's weapon and firmly declared that the response to his actions was wrong and that he himself would decide the outcome of the fight. After that, something unpredictable and terrible suddenly appeared behind him, which could turn the situation in any direction. The beast mercilessly trampled the man to the floor, demonstrating its strength and fury without the slightest sign of mercy. However, this beast must have been the phantom creature of the shadow element that had been before them earlier, causing fear and respect. They asked him to take command and give orders, assuring him that they would carry out any of his instructions without question. He asked in surprise why the orders he gave had no effect and expressed fear that he would soon be killed. Realizing that they were going to die anyway, he decided not to resist or try to suppress what was happening. They expressed gratitude for his understanding and calmness in such a critical situation. At the same time, he was a master at extracting answers from the dead, able to extract truth from the darkest sources. He then gave the command to Beleta to take action, beginning the next stage of their plan. Of course, after this, loud screams and noise filled with tension and fear were heard in the room. But the beast no longer cared about what was happening, and he mercilessly exterminated everyone in a row, stopping at nothing. After this, no one remained alive, and the room was filled with dead silence and emptiness. The guy decided to concentrate and try to find out what was left in the memory of the dead in order to understand the course of events. He concentrated deeply to access their memories and see everything they experienced in the last moments of their lives. In his memories, he heard some guy ordering complete chaos during the exam, claiming that the more destruction, the better their plan would be. The guy looked at this man carefully. Leewin asked, seeing the president, if the task was too difficult for him, and told him not to worry. It was time to find out the intelligence of the level of average tamers, which was only known to people of this rank. He asked what was only known to average people. She replied that in the old world everyone dreamed of becoming rich, but in the new world everyone dreams of becoming an animal tamer, and asked if he knew why. He replied because they have status and phantom beasts, and that's cool. But she replied that no, because for the average person like that the rules of the old world no longer exist. For example, even the strongest person cannot withstand a bullet. This is a simple truth. Leewin asked if the average tamer could withstand a bullet. She replied that by going through a special ritual, he could create a phantom beast that would take the blow in its place. Soul Link is a beast master technique that is only available to mid-level masters. The master links his soul with the soul of a pattern beast. While this technique is in effect, all damage dealt to the master is transferred to his beast, and as long as one party is alive, the other will not die, regardless of the severity of the wounds received. At this time in some park, the girls were surprised that this guy was so young and already a beast master. It was very impressive. The guy didn't react to this in any way. At that moment, someone came up to him and asked if everything was okay with his animal. He replied that yes, his animal was perfectly fine. He added that he seemed to be doing well with the walk and would come back to him next time, thanking him for his trust. They realized that he was just a stinky student who was walking animals. He was showing off, and from his appearance she already thought that he was some kind of cool guy. They are losers, so what if he walks animals for the rulers? But in one walk he picked up 2 girls. At that moment, someone ran up to him and asked if that guy was by any chance the dog walker. Well, of course, she said. At their age they don't become real masters of beasts. It is immediately obvious that he is also a dog walker. Even he, a genius from a top university, did not pass the master of beasts, and this ragamuffin is not even close to being a master. He began to ghost. Leewin told Blue Gentlecat that they would not sit here, but would wait a little. At that moment he approached him and asked if he also walked animals and how many he took at a time. Leewin asked what this was all about. The guy asked if he got it, but it was clear that he was a newbie, and people like them temporarily look after the master's animals, popularly called dog walkers. Leewin said that he didn't know, but he would find it himself later if necessary. The guy said that he was pretending to be a beast master. It was all his old tricks. It was clear to everyone that at their age they don't become real beast masters, so let him not tell him here. At that moment, the two of them noticed the car. The part-time worker turned to the guy and said that she had kept him waiting, that she had been delayed by other things. She jokingly called him a mid-level venerable master and asked him not to hold a grudge. Leewin asked her to stop making fun of him. She said that she had not given him the assignment she had spoken of, and that he should take it home and study it at his leisure. Then let him hold on tighter. Let's go. The guy was very surprised at that moment. The girls couldn't figure out if this guy was really a beast master, even a mid-level master, and the guy was surprised, almost running into a real mid-level master. One administrative building. The girl said that she brought him to the training center of the overlords herself so that he would not be detained the first time. The guy asked if they would bother him. Usually there are no such problems, because the training center is a branch of their association for overlords, but 3 years ago there was something. The association decided to promote the knowledge master of the senior beast master to the position of the head of the center, but to their surprise, this senior master turned out to have a very strange character. If he is in the mood, he is ready to share knowledge with any ruler, regardless of level, but if he is not in the mood, he will throw even the coolest ruler out the door. Leewin asked in surprise if this was possible. So for the past 6 months they had been personally accompanying the overlords who had passed the exam to training, in order to at least slightly increase the success rate. Enter their city with the transition of this senior ruler over the year to the last place in the number of tired. Because of this the president cannot knock out more budget from the headquarters and is racking his brains. At that moment, Caishlin noticed that Beishi's sister had returned and said that she had kept her waiting. The girl asked the main character if Beishi's sister had come for him, which meant that he had also passed the exam. He was very surprised that the ice python recovered so quickly. At that moment, the girl stopped him and said that the guy was their enemy. Let him listen carefully. Even though he saved her in the exam, she swears that one day she will surpass him. Leewin simply said in surprise that he understood her. The woman said that it was enough to waste time. They were going to Master Pan. He asked him if he was a mid-level master, or if perhaps this certificate was due to connections. Leewin asked what he meant. He said that he knew that he was not a jock reading, and that nowadays there are plenty of people who climb up the ladder using connections, unless he can prove that he actually has the ability. The girl asked if he hadn't seen the recording of the exam the day before yesterday, when he was the one who dealt with the crisis alone. And who knows, maybe they faked this record, and besides, to die in a Madden-patterned ice python, isn't this the basic level of a beast master? If they don't want to study, then let them pass the tests, prove that they didn't get in here by pull, otherwise there won't be any conversation. Well, do they have the courage to accept the challenge? The girl asked why he assumed that they had married dishonestly and had come to the official exam of the ruler, and at what stage he decides here whether they are preparing or not. The man said that he was the head of the Overlord Training Center, and if he said no, they would not be able to forget about the Overlord's combat missions for the rest of their lives. Leewin said that it was enough, he understood everything. He doesn't want to waste time, let him say what they need to do. The man, of course, was pleased by this. He said their challenge was right here, and a beast from some sphere appeared in front of them. How could this illusory beast receive such severe injuries? Who could do such an inhumane thing to this cute firefox? He said that those who do this to the firefoxes are the beast masters. The girl laughed, not understanding what this meant, and asked in surprise. After all, they came to study the secret technique of the ruler, the connection of souls, otherwise they would not start taking animals on dangerous missions in this technique, and they will force the animals to take the blows that were supposed to come to them, and when the animal reaches its limit, they will not abandon it and will find a new one, stronger. So, will they have the courage to face this wounded firefox, who is now extremely hostile to humans? Even he had to make a huge effort to get close to him. If they are not confident in themselves, let them go home and play with their animal dolls. Leewin, of course, became interested. His level was 12, normal condition, severe injury, rage, poisoning and mutations. Leewin understood the poisoning, but asked what kind of mutations. He asked the man what he had just fed to the firefox. The man, surprised, asked how he knew what he had fed it. Leewin told him to stop talking and speak quickly, otherwise the fox would die. The man realized the seriousness of the situation and said that he had just given him a fire fruit to restore his strength, asking how it could be dangerous. Fire fruit is often given to fire beasts, but why did this fox have a rejection reaction? Leewin asked if the beast's wounds were related to the ice attribute. The man asked in surprise how he knew, but explained that after ice wounds, you can't give fire food right away, so he waited until the ice state subsided before feeding it. Everything was correct. In the current normal state there was nothing related to ice, but the rejection still began. Perhaps the cause was poisoning. Most likely, The beast received attacks from both the ice and poison attributes at the same time, and due to the interaction of these attributes, the poison in its body still retains ice properties and continues to spread. The man said that he had never encountered such a rare case, and the guy replied that now, no matter what, this is the most logical explanation. Because the poison has icy properties and the state of rage all come together, the system asks if there is a way to save the beast. Black maple fruit, 600 grams, zinc bamboo juice, 120 grams, silver frost grass, 200 grams. You need to grind the 3 ingredients, mix with water, make steam and let the fire fox swallow it together with the ice crystal while it's hot. This will allow it to super evolve into the second rank of the beast. The guy said to bring all this. If he wants to save the fox, let him collect the specified ingredients. The man asked Leewin if this could really cure the beast. To prevent the fire fox from ceasing to be fiery, he puts it higher. Leewin began to prepare something that would save the beast. The man said that this guy was treating something. Maybe it was a healing diet. The chief said that in a while everything would be ready. The man asked if it was even possible to eat it, if it would poison him, and if they could sort out the errors in the medications that could kill. Then Leewin placed a stone on top of all this. The guy asked why he was looking at him like that. It wouldn't make things worse anyway, let him trust him and try. An hour later the animal began to vomit. The man, of course, told the boy that the animal had been vomiting for an hour and was clearly getting worse. Leewin said that he checked all the ingredients, dosage and steps, everything was correct, there should be no problems. The man asked what if something happened. At that moment, a huge fire formed behind him. The man didn't understand what was going on. The chief said that what was supposed to begin had begun. The beast accepted its new birth. He turned into a frostfire fox. The man was very surprised that the animal had evolved. Leewin congratulated him on his recovery. It seemed that with the help of the system, any beast could be composed to evolve into a higher form. He told the man that he had successfully saved the fire fox and asked if that meant he had come for the test. The man said that this guy had just done a lot of things, and was still thinking about the trials, finding out the cause of the disease, creating a cure, and even making a beast for evolution. Even the elder overlords couldn't do this. The man began to say that they should not underestimate the guy. He had passed the tests, and he would, of course, pass on the secret technique to him. But first a warning. If he dares, under the guise of his ability to heal, to intentionally heal animals, he will not forgive him. Then, without further ado, I will go and teach him the technique. At this moment, Leewin was trembling for some reason. An animal approached him, and the guy wondered if there was anyone else. The animal began to lick him. The boss told him to stop. It tickled him. This guy actually tamed a frostfire fox, and it really reaches out to people on its own. Leewin said that he was okay now and that this was something new. After that he bowed to him. It is unclear why the man immediately hit him after that. He explained that the beast wanted to go with him. Couldn't he see that? Leewin said that his finances at home were such that he could not feed him, and that taking the beast without the consent of the previous master was somehow dishonest. Let him not dare mention that bastard. If it weren't for him, that fox wouldn't have been so badly injured. He had already taken that one out of the Overlord Association, so let him not worry about it. Can't he feed the Frosty Fire Fox and the Strawberry Cat? Okay, the fox, but the Strawberry Cat is already unpretentious, and scraps will do for him. Leewin said that he actually has a dog with extreme cold at home, so it's really tough. The leader won't allow the beast to feel it anyway, even a cruel one, so let him come every week to help treat the wounded beasts, and he will pay him. Naturally, this immediately interested the main character. It was already evening at that time. The deputy called Chief Lu and said that this was not at all what they had agreed on. The protagonist and Keishala, no matter how brilliant they were, could not participate in the army's combat operations directly. And didn't the military say that it was enough for them to watch from the sidelines? Let her calm down. They in the army don't have a choice either. Since then, in some world, illusory beasts appeared. The rules of the game changed overnight. All countries, for the sake of their own goals, day and night, catch, train and raise increasingly powerful beasts. As long as they held the lead, they could guarantee their safety, but now the situation is critical. If they are overtaken, the outcome will be out of their hands. She shouldn't worry, the army will do everything possible to protect the students, but they should not carry out combat missions. The next day, the main character looked at these guys and realized that it was not for nothing that they were chosen as genius rulers of all the provinces. Each lord has beasts of at least the second rank. At this time, a military vehicle was standing nearby. They were surprised that it was a real military machine. It was the first time they had seen something like this in real life. Before, they had only seen it on TV. At that moment, someone started to come out of her. It was some military man. The guy said that he was impressive up close. This instructor was just stronger than usual, and that's all. They weren't fools. Since they made it this far, they were all seasoned here. At this moment, they definitely paid close attention to the man who suddenly appeared in front of them. The man looked at them sternly and penetratingly. as if trying to read their thoughts and intentions. They couldn't understand what exactly was happening, why the man's body seemed to start emitting some mysterious and powerful energy on its own. The protagonist quickly realized that it was an aura of murder, a sign of a powerful and dangerous force emanating from the man. It seemed like the man was checking what exactly shouldn't be touched and who it would be better not to mess with in this matter. The man realized that this year, not everyone among those gathered was scum, and some were truly worthy of respect. He said that, firstly, you are clearly not from this place, and he should praise everyone for the courage and determination shown. Their mission is to help the army evict and destroy a powerful illusory beast, which is considered to be at least a rank 3 beast in strength. To ensure that they would not be confused by the sight of such a formidable beast, he decided to give them a short but intensive course of special training before carrying out the mission. The guy replied that he was clearly underestimating them too much, because they were the elite, having already won the exams of the rulers in their home cities. Since they are so confident in themselves and their level, then they will start on their own 2 feet to show their capabilities in practice. The man agreed and said that then let them see what they were really capable of, but at the same time not to be offended if he did not restrain himself and used all his power. One of them summoned a poisonous, fanged centipede, and the other a majestic golden lion, ready for battle. In response, the man summoned a fiery bull, which immediately took up a fighting stance and radiated furious energy. The beast slowly began to crawl out of the car, demonstrating its power and terrifying appearance. It was at that very moment that he appeared before them, causing a sense of danger and tension in the air. The golden lion immediately began to fight the beasts they had summoned, demonstrating his strength and speed. Of course, the lion was much stronger than his rivals, and this was noticeable at first glance. The boys immediately felt fear and anxiety, realizing how much stronger their opponent was. They could not understand how this was even possible. The fire-horned bull was killed with a single blow, as if it had never existed. It was an incredible and devastating force that ended the fight in a matter of seconds, leaving everyone in shock. The main character instantly understood who exactly stood in front of them and whose power it was. It was a 3rd-rank golden lion with a level of 48, a beast deserving the highest respect and fear.